Welcome back to the channel. This video is going to be the sewing tutorial for this beautiful red sequin corset that has a one shoulder drape. If you haven't seen the pattern tutorial already, it is the video before this one and I'm going to link it down below, so you do check that out before you watch this one. I had an amazing time putting this corset together and it just snatches and fits at the right place. It also has the boning tunnels on the lining, so you don't see any boning on the outside of the corset. It laces up the back as well with a Modesty panel just to keep things nice. But if you'd like to see how I made this, make sure to keep on watching. In my previous video, I shared how I sourced the red sequins, all of the other materials that I needed for this project, as well as the pattern tutorial. So I made the sewing patterns for this corset from scratch using my body measurements. So do go check that out if you want to recreate this style for yourself or for a client, because once you have the pattern done, it just makes like cutting and sewing the corset a lot easier. But these are the materials that I worked with. I ended up using 1.5 meters of red sequined fabric, and then I have 1 meter of red lining to go on the inside of my corset, and then some red bias tape to make my boning tunnels. Everything just works a lot better when I work with the same color. And then I have 1.5 meters of red ribbon for the lace up on the back. You can make your strap with the same material if you wanted. And then for support, I have a pair of bust pads. I got these off of Amazon, as well as some slim boning. I'm going to mention all the materials in the video description down below, so you have a concise list for yourself. But since I already have the patterns done, I'm just going to go ahead and cut out my corset pieces. I ended up cutting all the pieces for the outer and the inner layer of my corset. For the lining, I cut 2 sets because the sequin layer is going to have one lining attached to it, and then the lining on the inside of that is like a separate panel, and that's where the boning tunnels are going to sit. So just keep that in mind if you want to have like a clean, beautiful finish on the inside and then have some support for the sequin material. So these are all of the pieces I cut. I have my sequin pieces and my lining pieces. The sequin fabric has a little bit of stretch, which is why I added the cotton, which is kind of like more stable, woven, and a bit more structured to keep everything nice and flat. Now, in terms of construction, I have put 1 set of the lining behind the sequin panels, and this you can do a basting stitch around, or you can be lazy like me because that's what I did. I ended up just layering them like this and then sewing straight away. So I'm going to be joining all of the panels vertically, so along the seams on the front, the back, and then joining up the front to the back along the side seams. The danger about not doing the basting stitch before here is if anything moves, you would end up with edges that are not even. So if you want to do like a loose stitch around your panels first, either by hand or with your machine, or even like some glue fabric, it just keeps everything nice and tight. But I took my time sewing this, and this is how it came out. A tip for ironing sequin fabric is to lay material over the surface of the sequin material and iron over that thread and onto sequins itself. What I discovered was the sequins were falling off the fabric because of the heat, so just bear that in mind if you're going to use a similar material. But I'm going to go ahead to drape the neckline, which I think is what makes this corset what it is. And the way to calculate how much material you need for that front is you need to measure along your front neckline, your shoulder length on the front, as well as the shoulder length on the back, and add all that together, because you need to cut a rectangular piece that is that total length, and then the width is 14 inches. I've just folded it in half, so it's 7 inches folded. But once I have that rectangular piece like this, I'm going to start by folding in the beginning edges twice. So I'm going to pleat it in twice so it fits into that top corner there. And once I have that top corner pinned in, the rest of the top edges goes along the front neckline. On here, I'm creating the pleats that sits on this side of the front neckline, and then I'm going to go in and pleat in these edges of my rectangular piece along this side of my neckline. The thing with draping is you want it to look as flattering as possible and to suit the design that you have in mind. The inspiration image is the drape kind of was higher on one side and it was lower on the other side, so I'm trying to make it kind of like sit a little bit lower under the bust like so, and I'm just creating like small pleats and pinning that into the actual corset body. And I'm going to go into the middle and just make another small pleat to arrange the material that it looks like it's kind of molded to the corset body. And then for the shoulder strap itself, because it has an open end on that side, I'm going to take this to my machine and actually sew the edges closed. So the top edge that is from that corner of my front neckline to the very back end, I'm going to take that to my machine and I'm going to put right sides together and sew it up. If I don't sew it like this and I just drape it like that on the corset, there's going to be like an open edge showing. Either that, or you would hand sew it on the mannequin or on your clients, however you want to finish it. We don't want to see any raw edges on our garments, so I'm going to do it this way instead. Once I'm done stitching it like so, I'm going to take it back to my corset and pin it again just to check that I like the way everything is draping. And if I'm happy with that, the next step is possibly the most painstaking part of this process, and it doesn't look like it's a lot of effort, but I just didn't want to take any chances with this drape falling the way I wanted it to. So I actually went in with needle and thread and I stitched the top edge of the drape to the neckline of the corset. I just took my time doing this because I knew that if I did this, by the time it's time for me to join the corset to the lining, nothing would have moved to a place that is not meant to move. So I just went in, needle and thread, took my time stitching across, and it takes away the worry of, is the drape the way it's meant to look, is everything staying in place? And if this was a client work, it just would put my mind at ease knowing that I have done this. So for those little pleats that I made on the front, I'm going in here just to hand tack them together and then tack them onto the corset body itself, so it looks like it's kind of glued to the corset, but it's just like carefully hand stitching it so it stays in place to keep it lower on the right hand side and then higher on the left hand side where the drape kind of starts from. So I'm just finishing up this particular spot that sits on this right edge of the front of the corset, and once I'm happy with where everything is looking, it's time to go on to work on the shoulder strap. Now I want it to be a little bit slimmer to look like it's kind of folded, so I'm going to fold certain sections along this piece and hand tack them before stitching it into the back of the corset. So I just hand tacked somewhere around the front, around the middle and around the back, and I'm going to just sew it by hand. I'm pinning it first just to check where I want my hand sewing to be, and once I'm happy with that, it's going to sit on the back neckline here. Because the sequin has a little bit of stretch, my entire strap piece was shorter by like 1 inch, so it would sit flat on my shoulder, and if I wanted to wear this piece off the shoulder, it would still look nice on my body. So once I was happy with the positions of my pins and I knew I liked the width of the strap, I'm going in here to actually like sew those pin points, so on my body it looks like it is holding its pleat and its fold because of those hand stitches I've added. The next step is to work on the lining panels, and in the same way that I assembled the outer shell, I stitched up the front pieces together, the back pieces, and then joined them on the side seams. And the lining is where I'm going to be adding my boning tunnels using the bias tape. So I'm going to be layering the bias tape over the seam allowance on the wrong side, and then I'm going to be sewing up the sides. By sewing up the side, I end up creating a tunnel through which I'm going to be passing the boning that would add the structure of the corset to this piece. So once I'm done with one side, I go in and I sew the other side, ensure that I'm leaving like enough space in the middle for my boning to actually pass through, and I'm going to essentially repeat this for all of my seams. So this is what the lining looks like from kind of like the right side, and this is what it looks like from the wrong side. I also added a bias tunnel on the center back edge because that would just add even more definition and more hold to the back of the corset. So I'm just going in here to essentially place the boning into the tunnels, and it's important to make your boning stop, I would say like ½ inch from the top and the bottom, because you're going to have a seam going through that hemline and a seam going through the neckline. So when you're cutting that boning, just keep it in mind that you need to make it just a little bit short on the top and on the bottom. So I went in to add all the boning into all of the tunnels, and for the bust I'm just going in there to just bend it a little bit so it actually holds that rounded shape that will sit around my bust area, and it's not straight, it's more curved. Once I was done joining all of that in place, I'm going in here to join the outer shell to the inner shell or the lining, and I'm going to be sewing up the hemline and the neckline of my corset, and then I'm going to sew up just one edge of the back, leaving the other edge open so I can turn this piece inside out. Sewing on 1 centimeter seam allowance, which is what I added on my pattern. I'm just going in here to connect everything together before I move on to the next step. Looking good so far. I have left about this much open on this side, and before I turn this inside out, I'm actually going to be adding the bust pads. This step is optional if you have like a strapless bra that you can wear in, or if you don't mind wearing your corset without any kind of support. I am a nursing mom and my boobs are just boobing these days, so I need all the support I can get. So I'm just hand tacking the bust pads to the inside of my corset, stitching it just to the lining so it's not visible on the outside of this piece, and I've stitched it on top and on the bottom so it doesn't move around while I have this on, and I have it slightly away from the front edge so it doesn't sit right at the middle of that nipple seam. It's just a little bit more to the side. I found that doing it that way just gave it a more natural sit on my chest. But once that was all done, this is what the corset is looking like. I'm going to take it to my pressing iron just to press everything nice and flat to relax all of the stitching, because that is really important. You can never over press a garment because it just looks a lot more clean, a lot more professional when you press all those seams. I mean, look at how cute everything is looking so far. I am definitely very happy. I'm going to move on to closing up the open end I left on this back edge of my corset, and I'm essentially just folding it against itself by about 1 centimeter and tacking it down. You can also hand stitch this if you want an even cleaner finish, because mine didn't come out 100%, but I think it will do. I think it's okay. But once you're happy with all of this, the next step is to actually work on the Modesty panel. This is optional, but these days I find that I just feel more comfortable having a Modesty panel, which is essentially like a rectangular piece of material that sits in that opening space on the back of your corset. Mine I just cut, and I'm just going in here to sew it around, trimming down the corners, and I'm going to turn it inside out because I left one short edge open. Once I turn this inside out, I'm then going to go ahead and sew the open edge close and then press it flat, ready to sit on the back edge of my corset. If you want this to even hold an even better shape and form on your corset back, you should definitely go in and fuse it with some interfacing, either hand sewn interfacing or iron-on interfacing. Basically anything that would give the Modesty panel definitely more structure. It's advisable if you have the time and if you have the means. But the final step of finishing this corset is to add the eyelets that sit on the back. I'm using gold because I think it just works really well with the red. It has like a nice spicy feel that I like. But to add the eyelets, the first thing I'm doing here is cutting a small opening. I'll say really small, like 1 centimeter, not too wide, because you want it wide enough for the eyelets to go through. You place one end of the eyelet here, like the wider side at the bottom, and then the slimmer side over the top like this. And once I press this, my eyelet maker, it joins them both together over that opening that I cut. So this I find to be the easiest way to make eyelets, and I have different eyelets sizes. I will link the kit down below. I got it from Amazon, and it comes with like gold and silver, and it's like a nice thing to have if you're someone who makes corsets often. But these are all of the eyelets in place. The corset looks really good. It came out very clean. I'm very happy with like the outcome, honestly. And that Modesty panel in the back just makes it even look, just takes it up a notch in a way that I love and I like. So I'm just going to add the ribbon lace up here. You can use ribbon, you can use a strap that you make from the same material, or like a rope if you wanted. Bias tape also works really well too. But with that, my corset is all finished. Guys, can we just have a round of applause for how this came out? Please rate it down below, 1/10. I just want to know, because I felt so good. Like, it's been a while I made a corset since having a baby, and my body has changed since then. But just seeing how this shaped my body in the most flattering way, even though the inspiration image of Taylor Swift looks completely different from mine, I love how I was able to change like the neckline depth and everything around the drape to suit my body more. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you did, give the video a thumbs up. Let me know your comments, thoughts and ideas down below. If you'll be creating this, don't forget to tag me on social media. And until my next video, have a good morning, afternoon and evening wherever you are. Bye.